Yusuf Raza Gilani is the longest-serving Prime Minister in Pakistan's history, but in that time he developed no shortage of enemies. He'd taken on the army and the Supreme Court.
I'm answerable to the Parliament. For any complaints, I will not answer to a person. I'm answerable to the Parliament. I will tell the Parliament whenever it desires to know my stance.
In January, he fired the Defence Secretary. He followed that by accusing Pakistan's army and intelligence chiefs of breaching the constitution. The military reacted angrily, and that isolated Gilani politically. But now it's the Supreme Court's look at old corruption cases that's pushed him from power.
There's no way out that the President and the Prime Minister cannot escape from this proceeding. He will have to appear before the Supreme Court. He will have to bow down to the Supreme Court of Pakistan. He will have to respond.
Gilani joined the Pakistan People's Party in 1988 and served as a cabinet minister and as Speaker of the National Assembly. In 2001, under President Pervez Musharraf's government, he was arrested on corruption charges and imprisoned for nearly 6 years. His supporters said the charges were politically motivated and baseless, but his time in prison became a mark of loyalty to his party. When the PPP came to power in 2008, Gilani became its leader. Despite being an outspoken politician, his government was sometimes slow to act. When the US military killed Osama bin Laden in Pakistan, it was a public relations disaster. No one from his cabinet spoke publicly for days. Gilani maneuvered to curb the influence of the Pakistani military, but he was never really successful. Shortly after taking office, he tried to make the country's powerful military intelligence agency, the ISI, part of the Interior Ministry. It was an effort to bring it under the authority of a civilian government. He quickly backtracked after the army refused to support the idea. Some said Gilani was just a mouthpiece for President Asif Ali Zardari, but he spoke out when others were silent. Now he will no doubt protest against this ruling, but Yusuf Raza Gilani has no legal route to appeal. His time as Prime Minister appears to be over. Will Jordan, Al Jazeera.
Imtiaz Tyab is live for us now in the capital, Islamabad. Imtiaz, Gilani was convicted of contempt almost 2 months ago now, so why is he being stripped of his job now?
Yeah, hi, Stephen. Well, basically what's happened here is this. When Gilani was convicted of contempt on the 26th of April, what should have happened next is the Speaker of the House, in this case Famida Mirza, should have gone to the Electoral Council, who would begin investigations and see whether or not, according to Pakistani law, the Prime Minister should lose his seat in the National Assembly and, of course, therefore be disqualified from being Prime Minister. Now, that didn't happen. So what's happened since then is political opposition leaders here in Pakistan, including the likes of the main opposition leader Nawaz Sharif and the leader of the PTI, Imran Khan, as well as many other opposition leaders, wrote to the Supreme Court complaining about this decision by Famida Mirza, the Speaker of the House, not to begin proceedings which would see the ultimate disqualification of the Prime Minister. She said she didn't have to, and that under Pakistani law she didn't need to make any such measures or put any such measures in place. Now, of course, here we are. That brings us to today. The Supreme Court has decided that Famida Mirza was not in any position to make such a decision, and that on April the 26th, the Prime Minister should have, or rather the proceedings should have begun to remove the Prime Minister. And that's why when you look at the language of this court ruling that has just come out today, which effectively says that anything that the Prime Minister has done since the 26th of April no longer is valid or is something that can be questioned, it's really because, according to the Supreme Court anyways, on the 26th of April, the Prime Minister should have stepped down from his post, should have been removed. That didn't happen. This court case has now happened. Of course, the Supreme Court making its decision, and the ultimate goal here is simply this: the Prime Minister, Pakistan's longest-serving Prime Minister, Yusuf Raza Gilani, is now out of his job.
So, what are the possible repercussions, both for the government and for the President, Asif Ali Zardari?
Well, look, this is bad news for the president. He, of course, supported Yusuf Raza Gilani for a long time. In many ways, Yusuf Raza Gilani was the president's biggest supporter. Now, this case, keep in mind, it goes back to a case involving the president back in 2008 when the Supreme Court ordered the Prime Minister, Yusuf Raza Gilani, to write to the Swiss authorities to begin a corruption case against the president. Now, of course, Prime Minister Gilani refused to do that, and that is ultimately what has led to him being convicted of contempt of court, and now all these problems that we're having now. But I think the long-term sort of problems that we can sort of see for the president is just how long is he going to be able to hold this government intact? Is he going to have to call elections sooner than he had hoped? Many had hoped, he had hoped that he could hold on to power at least until next year so that his government could serve a full 5-year term, but that's looking increasingly unlikely.
Imtiaz Tyab in Islamabad. Thank you, Imtiaz. We're staying in Pakistan.